Hello, my name is Alex Tarnava. You probably know me. I'm the CEO of Drink HRW Natural Wellness Now. I'm here with my friend Professor Ostojic. Now, Professor Ostojic is the very first human hydrogen researcher outside of Asia and Europe since 2010.
Yes, 2010.
You've been studying hydrogen in human subjects. He is a medical doctor and a PhD in medical sciences, and you are a professor at the University of Novi Sad.
Exactly, and University of Belgrade as well.
And University of Belgrade, teaching medical sciences.
Exactly.
So we're going to discuss a little bit about his research, his insights into hydrogen. He is one of the true pioneers on the subject, and importantly for us, he's been conducting research on our tablets, so that's interesting. So, first off, congratulations. You were just telling me you're published in Nature Medicine last week.
Yes, thank you for
not
that.
For hydrogen, but
not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, it was actually a paper on general epidemiology on obesity. I was a member of the group, which is located in Imperial College of London, and our paper got accepted a couple of weeks ago, and it was published last Friday about the differences in obesity between rural and urban population. So it is a big deal,
Yeah, no, absolutely. For anyone listening who doesn't know, Nature Med is probably the most prestigious scientific journal there is. It covers a wide range of subjects, so not just medical, everything, but Nature, by impact factor anyways, is quite prestigious. Very, very hard to get a journal into Nature.
Yeah, that's true.
Which brings me to the question, because you've been published in a lot of great journals like The Lancet, BMJ, I believe, right?
No BMJ, but Lancet, a couple of papers. Trends in endocrinology and metabolism, Mayo Clinical Proceedings as well.
Okay, yeah. So what early indicators on hydrogen got you to dedicate so much research to it? Because especially in 2010, it was incredibly esoteric.
Yeah, that's true, It is actually a funny story. Everything started because a colleague of mine who was a faculty back then and a chemist, he brought me a hydrogen supplement. He told me, because I already had some experience doing a lot of research regarding dietary supplements, and he brought new stuff. He told me this is something really special. It's back in 2010, he told me this is a very effective buffering agent. And he provided a couple of tablets that produces ferrous tablets, and I started to using it anecdotally with myself and a couple of my colleagues. And I gave a couple of tablets to my colleague, a medical doctor, who is also very interested into exercise, and he didn't exercise for a couple of years. And I told him to use it during his training program. And he told me a couple of days after he took a first dose, he told me that this was amazing because he didn't have any fatigue or any muscle soreness after a very heavy exercise. So he started to test it regularly and do a couple of studies back in 2010 and 2011, and there is one nice paper published in 2012 in Mayo Clinic Proceedings about the effects of hydrogen as a buffering agent after metabolic acidosis induced by exercise. So this was the first one, and after that many different studies followed, using different formulations of hydrogen and in real different populations, from top-level athletes to college athletes, but also in different populations of people with cardiometabolic diseases, even with cognitive impairment.
Yes, and I mean, I'm going to skip ahead in our talk a little bit because, it leads in perfectly. So your research has actually been mixed between sports performance, everywhere from pro athletes to, middle-aged, out-of-shape people to at-risk populations with pre-disease states, like metabolic syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is our recent subject. So recently, some of the researchers have been proposing that hydrogen actually works as an exercise mimetic, as a form of hormesis, and that parallels your research on exercise and these metabolic syndromes, right? How do you feel about that for the future, of your research? Because it goes so along with what you've been studying all these years.
That is a great question. I found hydrogen as somehow a proxy for my lab. My lab back in Serbia, the name of my lab is Applied Bioenergetics. and it's focused on understanding the physiology and pathophysiology behind the impaired bioenergetics in health and disease, with mitochondria as a center of the process, how to utilize and use energy, and also we try to develop new different interventions, particularly diet intervention, to prevent that impaired bioenergetics. And impaired bioenergetics is linked with poor athletic performance, cardiometabolic health, also with different neurodegenerative diseases. And somehow hydrogen could be used as a very specific targeted mitochondrial nutraceutical, I call it like that. That is a very small molecule, goes into the mitochondria, probably regulates mitochondria to very different mechanisms, including the neutralizing reactive oxidative species, also probably acting, especially hydrogen-rich water, acting as a buffering agent, but also through long-term effect, it might affect the gene expression, particularly genes that are related to mitochondrial bioenergetics. So hydrogen is probably my favorite dietary supplement and agent that I'd like to see applied in many different disorders in the future.
And another point that actually goes along with that, I just sent you the article I wrote, where I think it's not just an exercise mimetic, but a calorie restriction mimetic.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And really, for some of these states, like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's called a disease, but it's a disease of lifestyle, and there are no medications for it. The first line of defense is diet and exercise.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
that's true.
That study we just had out is very promising because there is no treatment.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I would like to thank you again for supporting my research in this direction. And the study, in my opinion, is very promising. We did it with not too many subjects. It was only 12 people, but still we did it as a double-blind randomized control trial, which is extremely important to really talk about effects of hydrogen from a scientific perspective. And we did find that the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or the fat accumulation in liver, decreased after the 28 days of hydrogen intervention, which is extremely important because we don't have any treatment approved so far for this very prevalent disease, because non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the most prevalent disease, liver disease in the world, and many people around the world, particularly in the United States and Canada, are suffering from this very complex disease. Which
1 in 3 or 4 for our listeners. Between 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 people are afflicted by it. I mean, even my dad has it.
Yeah. Many people has it, and still we don't know what is the real mechanism for that. It is probably a lifestyle disease with many different aspects, and hydrogen appears to be very effective for that. We measured with very advanced technology, magnetic resonance spectroscopy, we measured the level of fat accumulation in the liver, and it appears that hydrogen decreased the liver, significantly decreased the liver in specific focal points around the liver. And also, what we also found that it tended to affect body composition. We didn't find statistical significance, but body fat decreases as well. And also
and
it
just
affected...
28 days.
28 days, yes. It's a pilot study, but still the robust methodology and design we used is pretty good so far. I would like to see other labs confirming this data in the future.
And that's actually one point. As you know, we have a study that's finished, and being written right now on metabolic syndrome. That was, 6 months, 60 participant, and a lot of what has been observed in the shorter trials is, I don't want to talk too much about it because it still has to go through peer review, but from the raw data and the observations, it looks even more prominent over a longer effect. And that's important, and it's not quite replicative, but it's very supportive because, correct me if I'm wrong, but NAFLD and metabolic syndrome are at least about 90% bidirectionally causative, and a lot of researchers think that they're actually one and the same disease.
Exactly.
They're different expressions of the same condition.
Yeah, that's true. I'm very grateful. You sent me the preliminary data, and I took a look at that, and it was really nice to see that this is another study confirming the pro-metabolic effects of hydrogen. I would like to say that we did another study last year. The paper has been published in the Irish Journal of Medical Sciences, and we found similar effects using different formulation of hydrogen. So it appears that at least you probably know that also a dozen of human studies confirm that pro-metabolic effects acting as a agent that improves the serum lipids, improves the insulin secretion. So it appears that it might be recognized as some kind of mimetic of exercise, but in my opinion, the best option is to use both.
Yeah,
if you want to improve that lifestyle diseases we are suffering of.
To not just replace exercise, but potentiate the benefits
exactly.
of exercise. And likely there's other proponents, more commercial in the United States that push it for potentiating fasting.
Yes.
So they'll do water fasts, which are
Yeah.
getting research. I mean, I just wrote an article on I think it actually just came out a few weeks ago. Once you guys see this, and you'll have seen the whole study. So I wrote a 7-part on hormesis, and part 3 was on fasting, water fast, and time-restricted eating. And some of the research is showing that a couple, 3 to 5 day water fasts a year mimics the benefits of a lifetime of calorie restriction, right? For a lot of these markers. So a lot of people are suggesting that hydrogen, which is also potentially working as a mimetic in this fasting calorie restriction sense, can be used in conjunction with these short 3 to 5 day water fasts to potentiate the benefits even further, which is just great. More strategies we have. Now with the NAFLD study, another big marker that showed a benefit was the AST. But you were saying that there's an abstract that you analyzed some more data.
Yes. Even. It's really preliminary. This is actually news. I just told Alex that it has been a secondary analysis of the all data, and the extracts has been accepted to the BMC journal. It's going to be published probably on June 10th. We analyzed the same data from the same population, but now from HOMA2 analysis. This is integrative index that analyzes both the insulin secretion in the blood, also glucose and other markers, and gives some kind of general information about the whole glucose homeostasis in the blood after hydrogen intervention. It appears that hydrogen mimics the effects of insulin. So we could talk about that, and we could for sure investigate in the future that pro-insulinic effect of hydrogen. That might be very important for population with diabetes, particularly diabetes type 2.
Yeah, and I mean, all this information is fantastic because we're just gathering more and more knowledge on how hydrogen works, when it can work, why it works, right? What we can do to get it to work better, where it might not work. And one of the biggest skepticisms on hydrogen is that we don't have well-defined pharmacodynamics. And it's this odd bias that comes with hydrogen because it's new, and I think it's a little bit of a familiarity heuristic that people have never heard of it, so they think it's quackery, whereas we still don't have well-defined pharmacodynamics for things like lithium, which we're using as a drug, for things like acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, for things like penicillin even, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We don't know how these drugs work, but we know they do work.
Yes.
So hydrogen, we're showing that it does work, and we're actually getting closer and closer every year to knowing how it works, right? So I think it's a bit of a unfair criticism and skepticism on hydrogen. Possibly, I think people associate hydrogen water with magic water because there's been so many magic water frauds out there. It's my next question. We get just lambasted in industry. Everyone thinks it's a scam, thinks that there's no science on it. And then when we show them the data, right, these skeptics have no choice but to say, well, it needs more research. We don't know this or this. And then we say, well, we don't know this or this about drugs, this drug that's approved, or hydrogen has more research than CBD by a long shot, for instance. But yet everyone's excited about CBD. Why is there a double standard here? So we're just attacked constantly in industry. Have you found similar attacks in the scientific community at all? Have your peers been skeptical?
That's a very good question, but I never experienced any kind of similar problems from the scientific community, because I regularly write papers on hydrogen, and they're well accepted by the scientific committee. When I present my research on conferences such as this one, We are here for the ACSM in Orlando. I also presented one small work on hydrogen. A lot of people are interested into it, and I find that not just the Japanese people who started the whole story about hydrogen, but also people from the United States, from all around the world, are more interested into hydrogen. Everybody would like to see what's going on with that new intervention, because we recognize hydrogen as actually endogenous agent for many, many years. Nobody knows what is for. So right now, I think the biggest problem is the company and industry related, not the scientific community, because we have already, I don't know, even close to 700 papers describing the effects of hydrogen.
I think, yes, 700 papers that are either in animals, humans, or in vitro, and then another 500 review and hypothesis,
that's another,
and everything. So there's a
very
large,
good background,
and only 12 years.
Yes, that is really really interesting. Somehow I found that it's not good for the products such as hydrogen to be over-marketed by many companies. They are seen it as a miracle water, which is not. Of course, there is no such thing. So I think well-balanced.
Absolutely, it's interesting that the companies pushing hydrogen as the biggest miracle are the ones that don't actually have hydrogen in their product when they get tested.
Yeah, that's true. That's very interesting. I told you already about that.
It's one of those interesting dynamics, and I think it's because they don't understand science.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
The companies can't figure out how to keep the hydrogen in the beverage, and then they see this one study and they think that's scientific proof.
Yes.
Right. Whereas, say, for my product, we have, more studies underway in clinical validation. We have gone through a battery of testing on our hydrogen concentration more than basically anyone else in the industry. And I'm one of the most cautious people in claims in hydrogen, because the more you know about the subject,
everybody should follow that pathway you started. I think your company is doing in the right direction with balancing the hydrogen role in general health or medicine, and be skeptical is always a smart thing to do, but you are not, only a few companies have a similar path. Other companies, I search through the internet and I communicate with some of them, are overhyped the whole story behind hydrogen, which is not good for hydrogen. In my opinion, there is enough good, solid information that should be promoted in a well-balanced way. This is the way that hydrogen should be accepted by others who already didn't recognize the importance of this very important medical gas.
No, absolutely. I mean, it has a lot of potential benefits, but is it going to cure everything and everyone? Is it a panacea? Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely
there is
not.
No such thing,
No, there's no such thing. And when companies make these claims, I think it just increases skepticism, right? And even though we don't make these claims in marketing and we hedge everything we write, companies will Google and they see that this company made this miracle claim, and then I'm lumped in to the same category as everything else. And it's quite damaging in industry how that happens, and it's one of the reasons where we could be paying a lot of money for private studies under publication contracts where only what we want can get published, and I just don't think that's right. That's not true, So when you have an idea and you say, hey, I'm wanting to study this, right? And we go over it and I'm like, okay, I'll donate for some markers, donate some product, right? Does it make sense? I mean, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for the results. Right? Because you can publish,
of course,
no matter what. I'm not restricting you from publishing if it shows no benefit. And I don't know for sure. We have a good hunch, that it can help. But
we will see what will the study brought.
But that's how science works.
Exactly.
And so we have three finished clinical trials right now, one being written, the case studies that you've done. We have a handful other that are underway and more in planning. And the handful underway, I have no idea if they're going to work or not. It's edge of our seat.
That is the right way, I think. We always discuss about that during those previous study, that objective part of the story I'm offering to any company is the most important aspect, because I'm going to verify or not verify there's some kind of hunch we got at the start. This should be done by doing a proper studies with right sample, enough people included in the study, right markers, but also good interpretation, and not over-interpret the data, which is sometimes used by the industry. This is the right way, and I would like to see more people recruited as a scientist to advance the hydrogen in the right way, doing it as a good scientific principle method. I just did a small paper, a small opinion paper about the hype behind the hydrogen, comparing to real analysis of the number of good trials, clinical trials through the clinicaltrials.gov, and to see that actually we have to be more careful when we are talking about hydrogen, and perhaps to educate people, not just the general public, but also the professionals. I think we are very close to the first international well-organized event here in North America about hydrogen medicine. So that might be a right way how to educate the media, which is not sometimes well educated about the real science and good science behind the hydrogen. Also public, also professionals, let us think about that perhaps in the next 2 or 3 years to organize such an event and to present the good data and to invite everybody who is interested to understand really the story behind hydrogen. That is the way how we should influence the chemist you talk about. So many people are not informed only by reading the scientific papers, which are well aware of in favor of hydrogen, but reading the internet, you could easily see many papers about miracle water of hydrogen, which is not exactly the true. There is many benefits of hydrogen, but we have to communicate that in more balanced way, for sure.
And I think a lot of the information gets translated properly. I know one of the big skepticisms that people say is that even in Japan and Korea, where it's more popular, they'll bring up how the government warns against hydrogen water, but they aren't telling the full story. Like the government of Japan, has approved hydrogen as a medical gas in hospitals.
Yeah, the first country in the world.
A public warning that in 19 products that they evaluated, 17 didn't have therapeutic hydrogen.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
The media is saying North America is saying that as an example that the Japanese government is warning against this trend. But no, they're warning against companies that are misrepresenting their product.
Exactly.
They're not warning about the benefits
of the hydrogen.
They've already approved that for use in hospitals. They're saying that this commercial product doesn't have hydrogen.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that is a great example of how the same information could be misinterpreted. Japan, I have a pretty nice contacts with a couple of Japanese companies, and actually many most prominent scientists in the hydrogen research are coming from Japan, and this is the first country that actually recognized the hydrogen as medical agent, and the inhalation of medical hydrogen is really confirmed in a couple of very nice studies in really different populations. So I think that trend will go into the different countries in Europe and United States as well in the future. There is a really promising space for that type of thinking of hydrogen, but we should really educate people. The education, in my opinion, is the key, how to spread the good the qualities of the hydrogen all over the world.
And it's starting to get a little bit more interest here in North America. As you know, we have 4 ongoing clinical trials in the U.S. We're talking to some other teams in the U.S. and Canada that are interested. But it's really been a decade slower.
Yes, that's true.
Than everywhere else. As you know, the organization starting up the IHSA, the International Hydrogen Standards Association, they've already started the office in Japan to verify that products actually contain hydrogen that they're selling, and at least minimum therapeutic dosages. They're starting an office in the USA and Korea and China. I believe they're working on trying to find an option in Europe as well.
That is very important. About the story. We did a small in-house trial. I told you already about that, and your product was one of the best products in the world. We analyzed a lot of different products, and it appears that more than 50% of the products we analyzed didn't contain any hydrogen or contained it below the biologically active level. So it's a big deal. We have to standardize the whole story behind the level of hydrogen marketed. It is of huge importance. And I would like to highlight also another aspect that might be might be interesting. I did recently, a couple of weeks ago, I did a recent analysis of the number of clinical trials using hydrogen, and it appears that only 13 trials so far are registered at clinicaltrials.gov, and 12 trials are registered in the past 5 years. So we are seeing a trend of the increased number of trials, clinical trials in humans, in clinicaltrials.gov.
And that's interesting, because there's 65 published trials in humans on hydrogen.
Yeah, I'm talking about ongoing trials.
Oh, ongoing.
Ongoing trials,
okay.
yes. I'm talking about ongoing trials. And what I'd like to highlight as well is that the most trials still are supported by public funding bodies. There is no big pharma, no industry involved. Of 12 ongoing trials from 2015 to today, only 3 trials are supported by industry. So it appears that industry are using hydrogen, but then many companies are not doing the right way, like your company is doing, to register the trials, to find the best ways how to address the specific research question. Not so many companies are involved. I talk a lot about hydrogen to many companies, and some of the people told me the answer like this: other companies will do the job for me, so I will use their marketing and their studies to promote my product, which is a really big problem.
Even our study on NAFLD, I've seen ionizer companies marketing our study, which is
that is the case,
because we might get 100 times more hydrogen than their ionizer. Plus,
absolutely. Yeah. The protocol is different, the dosage is different, everything is different, but they still are stealing your ideas and that research marketing.
And it blows me away. The team in the United States that has 4 ongoing, registered clinical trials on, my product, they had first gotten a hold of the other manufacturer of the water-soluble tablet, before they found me, and they were happy they found me because I have legal status in the U.S. as a new dietary ingredient from the FDA. I have all the documents. I'm compliant with every governmental agency, which, by the way, it drives me mad. To be compliant doubles my costs. Yeah. So when competitors are breaking the law and not compliant with the government, and then trying to sell for cheaper, right? And then not supporting clinical research and everything. Well, when they contacted, this guy, he sent them different products, like some flavored, some unflavored, different lots, some were expired, and they're like, "What about placebo?" And he said, "Buy some Alka-Seltzer." Right? So then they found out about me because they're like, "This is wild." They large-scale clinical trials you're doing. I said, "No, I'll make lots for you, and I, send right to the pharmacy to do the randomization properly, and did all this because I'm like, they're getting public funds to do research. I want to support them as much as possible, and it's the same thing with you. I'm like, hey, if I make this placebo better, is it going to be easier?
You did a great job with the last study we did, because we discussed about that before the study started. It's preparation of placebo, for example, when we are using hydrogen studies, is extremely important, and I'm not really aware of many companies that they're doing a great job regarding the placebo. That should look like the real stuff in every aspect. So these small details are extremely important if you want to put the right context of your product, and you're doing a great job.
So for the viewers, just to know, because obviously, if you drop a tablet in a glass of water, people know, okay, this is this. And if someone isn't dropping a tablet in that other bottle of water, it's not really double-blind placebo controlled.
Exactly.
Right? So what we've done is we've made tablets that are the same size as the hydrogen tablets. They have the exact same amount of magnesium, per weight, and they actually dissolve plus minus 5 seconds to the hydrogen tablet, creating CO2 in the exact same cloud.
The same bubbles.
Bubbles as the hydrogen does. So, they're virtually indistinguishable from each other, which is how you're supposed to do it, because it takes out the
Yeah.
placebo.
Yes,
Back to
that
the
is a very interesting, funny story. When the paper was accepted, I didn't notice that in the methods,
Yeah.
and one of the reviewers asked me, "So is it really the same and the bubbles and everything?" And I included that in the final manuscript because this is a very important aspect to do a really good placebo-controlled study.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, can you speak about all we like I mentioned earlier? We have a couple case studies.
Yep.
That are completed. I know
Yeah.
you've submitted them.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
I know you can't talk too much
Yeah.
about them until they're accepted. But can
Yeah.
you tell us anything?
Yeah,
about-
Yep. The idea behind the case studies is actually to see on a couple of patients, is it really worth to do a proper study just to get us some kind of hunch about the effects of hydrogen? The first study we completed a couple of months ago was related with the use of hydrogen for the sports injury. Actually, it was an ankle sprain, and we recruited a couple of patients and finally decided to publish one case study with one specific patient. It was pretty impressive because we regularly use RISE protocol when we treat the ankle injuries.
Rest, ice, compress.
Yes, elevation,
when,
yes.
When you tear a muscle, like in your
Yeah.
ankle or knee.
This is a standard procedure, but probably in the past couple of years, we see that that ice component, which is included in the traditional treatment, appears to be very good for us because it decreases the pain and swelling, but it appears that it decreases or slows down the recovery process. So we would like...
Is it decreasing like blood plasma
Yes,
flow? Or?
yes, it decreases the circulation in general. It is good regarding the swelling, but the recovery is slower. So we would like to compare, is it possible perhaps to think about it, to use the hydrogen as a topical, actually hydrogen-rich water, to put a injured leg into the water to see what is going on in the first 24 hours. So the results are pretty positive. We found very impressive results regarding the better flexibility, also the decrease in pain, and the swelling is lower after intensive treatment. We actually did several immersions of the leg during the first 24 hours, and the results are very positive. This is just a case study, and it is right now in review, and I'm really positive about that. And I would like to see perhaps if especially if the paper is accepted, I would like to see the complete RCT study done in the future with
And that's one of the things
proper number of
we're,
subjects.
Talking about. And
Yeah.
It's something that I anecdotally truly believe in, and it was some of the photos I was sending in before
Yeah,
and after
yeah.
is that you're like, okay, let's do this properly. First off, that burn I had that was basically
Yeah.
healed overnight, and then I potentially broke my arm skiing, in a 400-meter tumble down a double black, and it was all swollen. And then after a hydrogen bath, it was for a few days, it was just an acute pain. My spouse, she was training for the Boston Marathon, which happened on her birthday last year, and she got shin splints, right? And I had to carry her from the train station during a run, and after 10 days of hydrogen baths, she went and ran like 32 kilometers and did the Boston Marathon three weeks later. It's stories like that. We have others, like pro MMA fighter that broke her hand and she had to get the pins taken out early because it poked through the skin because the swelling went down. Even last week, so I had shoulder surgery, arthroscopic surgery 2 weeks ago, and I didn't take a hydrogen bath for my first 10 days because of risk of infection. But I had a piece of tape on the wall, and doing the wall climb through mobility, after I took a 45-minute hydrogen bath, and now I used a crazy amount. I used about 500 tablets. Like I used a crazy amount.
Super.
But in a 2-hour period, after the 45-minute bath and then waiting for an hour, I got 3 inches higher on the wall.
It's very impressive.
Cut the swelling down for sure.
This is in line with a study. Actually, that was the first clinical trials registered on hydrogen for injury. We didn't use hydrogen as an individual treatment, but we use it as an adjuvant treatment to RISE. And it appears that topical hydrogen is particularly effective for flexibility. The paper has been published by Postgraduate Medicine. It is a very nice example how hydrogen might be effective for different soft tissue injuries. So in my opinion, besides the many different possible mechanisms of action, the benefit of hydrogen is related that this is a really small molecule that goes very fast into the site of the injury and neutralize many different toxic biochemicals at the site of the injury. So it's probably very smart and very perspective to conduct similar studies regarding the soft tissue injury and in general in musculoskeletal medicine, although still we should see it as an experimental agent rather than an...
Of course, and I mean, when we get these skeptics saying, well, it's still not medicine, well, we're not saying it's a drug that should replace therapies. Nobody in their right mind is saying that at this point. I mean, when we're talking about the benefits of hydrogen, they're promising. Right?
Exactly.
So there's again this double standard and skepticism where, say, even on like Wikipedia, CBD that has less research is talked about in this huge, like, promising, this big page on all the ongoing research. Hydrogen that has more research over a shorter time, because CBD has been studied since 1970. Hydrogen has more clinical trials with more success, more publications in a decade than CBD has in 50 years. But yet CBD, you know, maybe because it's a sexy molecule for the media, has this like huge Wikipedia page talking about the benefits, whereas hydrogen everyone's skeptical about and thinks it doesn't work, and they're like, oh, you're claiming it's a panacea. Well, no researcher is claiming it's a panacea. Nobody who knows the science is claiming it's a panacea. People who know the science know it's promising.
Exactly.
I mean, even in your wording,
a
potential
absolutely.
Adjuvant
Absolutely. I did a couple of review papers in pretty nice journals about the hydrogen, and I always try to find a balanced way how to describe the positive effects and the promising in the regarding general medicine and specific disorders, but also to outline what are the drawbacks regarding the limits in research so far. So that balanced way, I think, is the right way. So we should use it. We should do more research. We should of course try to find it right now as an experimental agent that is available. It's a dietary supplement, so we could use it, but we should use it in a smart way.
Absolutely. And another great example, and we were chatting about this a little bit, I mean, comparing, say, hydrogen therapy to something that gets huge media attention in nicotinamide riboside. Well, I mean, part of that is because, you know, NR, a lot of the early rodent studies came out of Harvard. So everyone thinks it's amazing research, even though nicotinamide riboside is literally 0 for 5 in human clinical trials in showing a benefit.
Yeah, that's
right. So they've shown it's safe and it raises, you know, NAD+ levels, but it hasn't lowered cholesterol or blood pressure or, you know,
general
muscle
biomarkers,
walking, like any of the markers that we associate with aging. It hasn't worked in humans. Right.
That's true.
And you know, that's the same thing with a lot of molecules that you know, we talked about that one paper, like they got it published in Cell, where they said succinate, you know, cured obesity. You know, by, you know,
every couple of years something
you know,
similar appears.
And you know, we know that there's dozens of molecules that cure obesity in rodents. They don't work in humans. And
most of
the
them,
ones that do work, like DNP in humans, will kill you.
Exactly.
So it's this weird skew, because when it comes to the hydrogen research, I believe the average publication's impact factor is around 3, which is
pretty nice. It's very nice.
It's a pretty good journal. Even our NAFLD, you know, that was about a 3 impact factor.
About around 3, yes.
So the research on hydrogen is far more than some of these other sexy molecules. Yet, I think because it's attached to the word water.
In my opinion, part of skepticism is related to the fact that so far we don't have a proper safety trial. Just a safety trial. We always use some kind of performance studies with hydrogen in different populations. So proper safety trials, those response trials you already mentioned, it, pharmacodynamics, long-term safety. Although we know that hydrogen so far is really recognized as a safe agent without any major side effects, still it will be probably smart to conduct a classical FDA, according to FDA rules, the safety trial, 90 days trial, maybe that might help everybody to recognize hydrogen as a properly analyzed agent. And of course, one of the biggest issues, but you already mentioned this is the case with many drugs, is that we don't really fully understand right now the mechanism of its action. Yeah. So better dose response trials and safety trials might help us to be recognized by the people who still think hydrogen is not adequately researched or
I'm glad you bring up dose response because I mean even a few years ago in Professor Ono's review of the 321 publications, he said that no dose response has been observed.
Yes.
Well, back then the technology didn't exist.
That's true.
To get higher dosages of hydrogen.
Yep.
So the dose response was, is it, are you getting 0.6 milligrams or 1.2 milligrams?
Exactly.
It's such a tight window.
Yeah,
now that technologies exist for higher levels of inhalation, for water getting, we deliver 6 milligrams up to 10 milligrams. Actually, in the metabolic syndrome, it's 15 milligrams. They were getting a day that we see crazy markers. We're actually seeing in the last few years that there is a dose response.
Exactly.
Right? That higher dose seems to be working better, quicker, more often. Right. So we are developing dose responses. For the safety, it's one of those check boxes that people who think like a bureaucrat deal with.
Yes, most medical doctors think like that. Yes.
Say getting IRB approval and talking to the teams, they say, why do we need a safety study? We endogenously produce 8 to 10 liters of hydrogen a day.
Yeah.
It's been used at 1,000 times the level in
mixed
deep sea diving.
Yeah.
It has, it needs a higher dose of hydrogen to create narcosis in mixed deep sea diving than nitrogen, which is the air we breathe.
Exactly.
So,
That's true.
The safety is so well established in other areas, but in terms of bureaucracy and skepticism, they want to see it exactly like this.
Yeah, that's checked.
In this amount. But for context, in the United States anyways, the FDA has declared hydrogen water as GRAS, generally recognized as safe, and they've declared our tablets as new dietary ingredient status, which means they did the same, GRAS evaluation on our tablets that they would if it was a food. So that the difference between NDI and GRAS is one of bureaucracy. Supplements have to be a new dietary ingredient. Foods have to be GRAS, right? So it's a very similar process. It's the same level of safety and information required. But skeptics who look and say, where's the long-term safety data? Now you have to go into all the facts why the FDA would think it's safe in talking about the mixed sea diving, in the endogenous production. So you need a big explanation where the skeptics are looking for one paper submitted
that's true.
Subject.
Which probably has in the title the safety study on molecular hydrogen research. That will be great to have something like that. But I would like also to draw attention to the history of hydrogen use. You mentioned that it exploded during the past 10 or 15 years, but still the first paper has been published in 1975 in Science. It was a big deal.
Between, Baylor and Texas A&M.
Yes.
Right. So that was a very different study, and nothing happened since then because even though it showed such amazing benefits in rats for skin tumors, skin cancer, what were they in a 96% hydrogen hyperbaric chamber under
extremely specific conditions. Yes.
So the pressure was 8 atmospheres. That would, I think, kill a human being.
Probably.
Right?
That's not a
96% hydrogen would kill a human being, only having 4% oxygen. So the conditions that the rats were in, it could never be a human trial. So I think people just forgot about it.
Yeah, that's true. Probably that is the reason. But still, when you're published in Science, back in 1975, it should draw attention of other researchers. I agree with you that it is a very specific protocol, but still, that was the way.
An interesting anecdote on that.
About that Dole paper.
One of my investors, his brother is a researcher at Duke University, right? And when I was first looking into it, his brother's a biochemist, and he said, hydrogen. He's like, that came out in the 70s. And he said a chiropractor set up a clinic in the Cayman Islands or something and was claiming to cure people of cancer. And he said it was such a black eye that nobody wanted to touch the research in the 70s because of this chiropractor
Oh yeah,
doing damage.
Yeah.
You know, and I was trying to get information. He's like, that's before the internet. He's like, I remember it. My memory could be a little bit wrong, but
still something happened like that. Yeah.
When I brought up, molecular hydrogen, he's like, there was a big publication in the 70s on cancer. Like, he remembered it, and then he told me this story about a chiropractor that did some really dangerous things, and he's like, nobody in the research community wanted to touch it and be associated
with that
with
agent. That is a case with many other agents. Sometimes the people who use it inappropriately, particularly when they implement the studies from animals directly to humans using similar ideas, is not a good idea how to promote the real medicinal properties and qualities of an agent.
And I think I was telling you one of the big reasons. Originally, I was going to not private label the product. I was just going to create a brand, right? To only market it how I want to market it. And I was actually talking with Tyler LeBaron, where he said, if they don't buy your product, they're going to buy another product that has no qualms about them making magic claims. And we're going to have the same problems that researchers had in Japan and Korea getting grants, because these companies were claiming it was H3O or, not understanding anything, claiming it was magic, not putting hydrogen. So, and Tyler's saying, he's like, these other companies that want to market it, they don't understand the science. He said, why don't you put it in your contracts that you have to vet their marketing and work with them, because then they can give reasonably accurate messaging rather than it just being me in a sea of people making magic claims. And that was, I wrote an article, a month or two ago. It went on the site called 100 Voices, and why, the tablets are available in so many companies, because I want to see this marketed properly in 100 different channels, talking about 100 different ways.
So sometimes it's a good idea to recruit some kind of advisory board or some kind of team of people who has a good reputation and who are objectively observing the ideas and the products of your company. Some kind of team that guarantee that you are doing a good job. Many medical companies, big pharma companies actually have some kind of independent advisory boards that somehow guarantee
a lot of supplement companies do. And even I do. I have a lot of different consultants that I bounce things off of. One thing that in the series I'm writing, don't trust the health experts on absolute statements, and just talking about how messaging in health has become so binary. Everything is black and white. Everything going on. And even when we're talking about, say my article that I wrote on hydrogen as hormesis.
By the way, you are writing extremely good articles.
Thank you. Well, I was, talking, with, a few different people, yourself included, and I'm like, a few of them were like, you should try and publish that. And I'm like, who am I to publish an article? They're like, well, you certainly have enough references. That's true. You could change it, you could write it. And
you did a good job. You should try to publish it. You are very objective. If you overview all the important papers and you give a very good perspective, you should do it. Probably publish it through a specific line, such as opinion paper or letter to the editor or something like that. You should try it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it, but it's just that interesting, thing that even though I know I understand the topic much better than most people in the papers that even I'm referencing and writing, like I'm looking at some of these papers, I'm like, what is that conclusion they have? That makes no sense, or this is wrong, or that is wrong. And it's, they have 8 references in a 3,000 word article, and I have 172 to back up what I'm saying. But it's you need that self-doubt, right? And this is how science works, and this is why you need an advisory board and all these people, because anything I'm doing, I have someone else that is more of an expert about it than me. Now I put the pieces together.
That's a smart way
I can talk about the whole story better than anyone else. But there's no single thing that I'm doing in my business, in the clinical outreach program, in the development of the product, where I do not have an expert that knows one component of it 100 times better than I do.
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's
I think the hydrogen community needs more people like you, because this is the right way how to do it. I found your company really, and I really appreciate the collaboration we have during the past couple of years, as a proper scientifically backgrounded company, because you always try to implement the principles of good science into the whole story behind hydrogen. So we need more people like you.
well, that's why I got into it. I didn't get into it for the money. I mean, I risked my mortgage. I spent every dime I had getting this going, and I left a
Yeah.
at the time way more profitable business. Actually, back then more profitable than it even is today. Years later, I think hydrogen will be more profitable in the future,
Yeah.
but certainly it was a massive risk, but I did it because of my interest in it from a scientific perspective, right? So it was already a big jump for me philosophically, because back then when I started, one of my hobbies was I was kind of like a skeptical troll, that I'd go into natural pages and troll them when they were making claims that didn't make sense, and had a lot of pseudonyms banned on a lot of like the biggest websites and everything. So to go from that to lying and marketing is just something that I couldn't have done with who I am as a person. As you know, my
Yeah.
founding partner is a PhD chemist,
Yeah.
medicinal chemist from the pharmaceutical industry. Everything he does, he wants to do.
Yeah,
We
in a
need
proper
all this
way.
information, right? Because he's been trained
Yeah,
throughout
yeah.
his schooling, throughout his
Yeah, yeah.
professional career, that we need to get this evidence.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
If we
yeah.
don't have this evidence, we can't say anything.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't have
Yeah,
the evidence.
that's the right
So
way.
We've kind of gone at this kind of as like a shoestring budget pharmaceutical model, right? To try and say we need to gather this evidence, we need to see if we can say this, we need to see does it do this, how
Yeah.
does our product compare to this?
Yeah.
Even in my article comparing hydrogen technologies, I mean, there's challenges. I mean, even with our product, we might get in, gas probes, they measured at the University of Beijing, we get about 3 ppm. Well, the rest that we test is this quasi-dissolved nanobubbles, right? But then the magnesium
Yeah.
also, which, I wrote about it. It's hilarious, people bring up concerns with the magnesium, where we're actually putting together studies to test, because we believe that the bioavailability of the magnesium is superior to salts because the work's done
Yeah.
in the water in the reaction.
Yeah.
Right? And, a lot of the researchers are like, thinking, they're like, man, like, how do we know that your magnesium, based on the chemical reaction, isn't better than the placebo magnesium?
Yeah.
So some of the Japanese companies are saying, oh, magnesium's dangerous.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Metallic magnesium. Yes.
whereas like it's just magnesium ions, and in fact, they're free in the water and probably
Yeah.
better than most of the salts.
Probably,
on the
yes.
more purer, less heavy metal contaminants and
Yeah, yeah.
everything like that. So it's one of those interesting things, but it gets into dosing that, okay, so maybe we can't claim the benefit of, say, that one company that gets 7 to 10 ppm saturated, but at the same time they have aluminum in what they're using, and it's under pressure for 8 hours.
Yep.
Whereas we're delivering a similar amount of total hydrogen, but what's the difference between our 3 ppm dissolved and the 7-8 ppm quasi-dissolved, then the magnesium, right? So we can at least claim the benefits of hydrogen products that are lower in H2 than ours, and there's only a couple studies that have higher dissolved,
Yeah.
but then they can't claim the benefits of our quasi-dissolved
Yeah.
magnesium. And it's one of the big issues in knowing what you can say about what, right?
Yeah.
Because there's different technologies
Very
dosing
different.
at
Yeah.
different levels in different combinations.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
Does the company in Japan that uses aluminum, it gets to 9 or 10 pH or something, and they're saying no aluminum gets into the water, but that doesn't make sense, because if you start with distilled water and it gets to 9, 10
Yeah, yeah.
pH, that means hydroxide is getting in. That's aluminum hydroxide.
Yes.
It's getting through their filter.
Yeah, yeah.
We know that aluminum can be
Yeah, very dangerous.
dangerous.
Yep.
Right? So what's going on,
Yep.
with that, and their claim, they're trying to say our magnesium is dangerous,
Yeah.
which
is not true, probably.
not true. Well, they're using aluminum, so
Yeah.
it's just wild stuff. And I think
Yeah.
this goes into everything else what we're talking about. Like, these are the impediments we have in getting hydrogen
Yep.
mainstream.
That's true.
Because
Yep.
it's confusing.
Yeah,
Right?
it is.
People get confused, right? But at the end of the day, we're seeing in these reviews that say we know that hydrogen water has a similar benefit to gas at a rate of 1% dosing,
Yep.
right? So we know that. So we can say,
Yeah.
okay, in most of these models, either inhalation or water works, right? We know that it should be intermittent and not continuous throughout the day.
Yes.
And we know that, 1 milligram of water would require 100 milligrams of inhalation. So in the skeptics saying that we can't directly compare, I don't think that's true, because if we have a study on a subject where both water and inhalation works, and we have these formulas worked out
Yeah.
on the availability of the two methods, we can cross-use those studies.
I think that this is a very important point, because besides the differences you mentioned, there is a fundamental difference between the inhalation and oral administration, since inhalation is always seen as a medical way how to address this, and all inhalational agents are medical drugs.
Yeah.
Why the hydrogen-rich water or different oral formulations are dietary supplements. So it's basically different, considering the FDA and every other aspects all around the world.
Regulatory-wise,
Yeah.
completely different. Inhalation devices are medical devices.
Exactly.
Whereas our tablets are a dietary supplement, whereas a bottle of hydrogen water is a food.
Exactly. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's more down to government, right? So
Yeah.
we can identify in science what dose to dose
Yep.
in different products is going to work, and we could say from a scientific standpoint that taking this 10 milligrams of hydrogen a day in the water, you'd need a gram,
Or more.
or
yeah.
more from inhalation, so you're going to
Yeah.
have to do this to
Yeah.
probably see a similar benefit.
Yeah.
But then the skeptics will say, well, inhalation is a medical.
Yeah, that's true.
Water isn't medical, inhalation is, and that's a matter of bureaucracy,
It's a matter
not-
of bureaucracy and
not-
perhaps
not efficacy.
Yeah, yeah, not efficacy, but also part of the answer might be related to those response studies. It's similar like vitamin C. When you give it in the lower dosages, it's a part of the food, but in special type of or routes of administration in special dosages, it becomes a drug. So we should do perhaps more education about the differences and the similarities between two routes of administration, for sure.
Exactly, and it's something I've mentioned to the researchers making up the IHSA, because they've developed the minimum threshold of observed benefits.
Yeah.
That we have seen a benefit in
Yeah,
humans
that's
at
extremely
this
important.
level, and that it appears, the study that the Chinese team that Tyler LeBaron was on in rodents for NAFLD, where they showed that I think it was
Yeah,
0.2 ppm of ionized water
Yeah.
with hydrogen had no benefit, whereas I think it was 0.7 even, like a low dose,
Yeah.
came with benefits.
Yes.
Right, so we've now established 0.2 didn't work where
7 works. Yeah.
did in that model. I think Professor Noda had a study,
Yeah.
showing similarities.
It's already published. I read the paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice work.
So,
yeah.
we are establishing these dose responses, and we can do a better job in doing it. And I think, in even talking with the IHSA, they say, yes, we're going to need more publications and more work, but they're going to know what a high dose benefit, what the highest observed results are,
Yeah.
what might work for this condition, because it's probably going to come down to how many milligrams of H2 or micrograms per H2 per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah, that would be
you
great.
have,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yep.
it's going to be different for every person.
Absolutely.
How much does a person weigh?
Yeah.
What damage do they have? What model is being
Yeah.
used?
And also another interesting aspect, how exogenous hydrogen administered by inhalation or oral different formulations, what is the link between the endogenous and exogenous hydrogen?
Because it's mixed right now using things like lactulose and
Yeah,
other,
exactly.
other
Yeah.
products to raise endogenous hydrogen.
Exactly.
The results are mixed. But
That's true.
We know, we have data on things like, say, for instance, turmeric raises hydrogen breath inhalation. We know the diabetic drug acarbose.
Yes, also, exactly, right? Increase the production of hydrogen in the gut.
Publications on acarbose for ulcerative colitis.
Exactly.
Saying that the hydrogen creation would benefit ulcerative colitis.
In line with that, I published an opinion paper last year in Trends in Endocrinology and Metabolism, top journal in the field of endocrinology, about the possibility that the lack of endogenous hydrogen might be related with Parkinson's disease. So it appears that there is a difference in gut microbiota, and probably the people with Parkinson's disease has less hydrogen producing bacteria in the gut. So those population might need an exogenous hydrogen.
And there's the studies on hydrogen positively influencing the gut microbiota.
Yeah, that is a very, very important aspect.
Not only with the hydrogen then, in this line of thinking, people with an impaired gut microbiota are producing less hydrogen.
Yep.
Right? But then when you put in exogenous hydrogen, like through hydrogen water, not only are they getting exogenous hydrogen, but it's improving their gut microbiota, which is
exactly different profiles.
Yes, hydrogen.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And it's quite interesting, in Parkinson's disease. So we know Parkinson's has had very mixed data so far.
Yeah.
There was the first 48-week human study that had very good benefits on Parkinson's, right? The rodent studies were mixed. It found that water worked and inhalation didn't really work so much. So they did a short study on inhalation of hydrogen, and it didn't work for Parkinson's disease, but it did affect other markers. And then there was that big multi-center trial that failed in Parkinson's. But when you buy the study and read it, there was a mix-up.
Yeah, that's true.
Both groups were getting hydrogen water intermittently. So the placebo group didn't get hydrogen every day, but they might have been getting accidentally hydrogen once every 2 or 3 days, which is a very intermittent-like effect to it.
It's a factor that might...
So there was nothing difference between the two groups, but they lost in the Parkinson's disease score something like 8 to 10 points less than what was expected in similar trials. So both groups were very beneficial over other trials of a similar duration. They were just not beneficial against each other. Which just might show that having hydrogen water once every 2 days is as beneficial in that model of Parkinson's as every day. So it was a huge error, which I think doesn't show that hydrogen water doesn't work, but it doesn't show it does. We need to study it again. Unfortunately, we are in the United States here using our tablets. There's a study going on, 70 patients for 52 weeks.
Yeah, that is a nice thing to know. And also perhaps I know a couple of those studies you mentioned. I wrote those papers, and it appears that the methodology is not perfect. Sometimes the primary outcomes are not good. We use those authors usually use surrogate markers of Parkinson's disease, subjectively reported markers, because it's very expensive to evaluate the biomarkers, including the MR scans of the brain or the muscle, or very specific indicators of motor neuron. So it might be good perhaps to see what are the biomarkers and then discuss about the effectiveness of hydrogen in this population.
And I've heard rumors from researchers that there's a team in China doing research on inhalation of Parkinson's, and they're finding that it's only working at a very high intermittent dosing, which again shows us, I mean, we know that like a high concentration of water, a high dose, drinking it maybe once or twice a day, is going to work better than someone sipping a low concentration all day long, even if the total milligrams of hydrogen are the same, right? Because we want that higher dose intermittent. So the
some kind of
trials
hydrogen boost.
Exactly, a hydrogen boost to enact gene expression. So the inhalation trials could be flawed too, because were they getting too low of a dose intermittently? And a lot of them will talk about the concentration, the percent of hydrogen gas in the inhalation, but they're using a cannula that's only delivering a liter a minute when we breathe in 7 or 8 liters a day. So that's a flawed perspective. You can't say you're inhaling 4.6% hydrogen when it's only a liter a minute, and the other studies are 4.6% hydrogen on 8 liters. For instance, it is a flawed methodology, with those inhalation studies as well. And to finish up on this subject, in things we need to gain mainstream acceptance and awareness, I want to talk just a little bit about responders versus non-responders. I know we've talked about, and you have seen maybe trends in data that you're maybe think that maybe some people are responding better than others. I've talked to the other research teams. They see the same things. They're like, anecdotally, like it looks like a large group are getting much bigger benefits. Even on the study we have being written right now, one of the big reasons it's been reevaluated, dug through, is because a couple of the markers that are super, both statistically and clinically relevant, seem to have a bit responder versus non-responder. And then, of course, we have that recent study on mild cognitive impairment, which found that only people with the ApoE4 gene responded. Right?
That is a very nice question, because we are facing that responder, non-responder story in the dietary supplement scientific community during the past couple of years. And it appears the creatine has also responder, non-responder story, caffeine as well, depending on many different aspects, including the different genes and response to those genes. About hydrogen and responder, non-responder story, I think we don't have really exact data. What is the reason why some people respond and others do not respond? Perhaps it might be the endogenous production of hydrogen or some specific genetic
Don't you have
profile.
a hypothesis paper?
About,
a little bit about
the
endogenous.
Yes, couple of papers.
Yeah,
couple
not about
of papers.
responders per se, but talking about difference in benefit.
Yes, that's true. I have a hypothesis paper about that. But at the moment, I would like to talk about perhaps another aspect that will influence the story of responders and non-responders. This is the sample size. Most of the studies are still small-sized studies. So if we want to really address this issue, we have to recruit more people. The biggest study I conducted recruited 48 subjects. It's a big study comparing to other hydrogen studies, but comparing to classical medical studies or big studies with creatine that recruit more, a couple of hundreds of people, this is the reason why we should not tell about the percentages, how many people respond to hydrogen. Anecdotally, I think that more than 80% of people respond well to hydrogen. Just anecdotally, this is just my opinion, particularly for those studies when we use it as an athletic performance, as performance enhancing agent.
That actually lines up. I literally texted one of my shareholders. He said, if you had to guess how many people don't respond to hydrogen, and I said, maybe 1 in 5.
Yeah, that is similar to this. Yes, about 20.
I said, on a guess, my feeling is 1 in 5 people.
Yeah.
That is more to do with people talking about like pain, aches and pains in their joints, construction workers and stuff. Even we have a lot of customers in our own brand, say in Vancouver, that it's spread throughout trades workers, and we're just finding anecdotally from a few hundred people, about 1 in 5 say they don't get a benefit, and 4 in 5 go, wow, I slept for the first time through the night. And 1 in 5 are like, no matter how much I take, it doesn't do anything.
It depends on the biomarker or patient-reported outcome you evaluate. It's highly dependent on that, so it's always good to have some objectively or clinically reported markers. For hydrogen and the responsiveness, I am well aware that many people who use it as ergogenic agents are pretty satisfied with the effects, particularly for that buffering effect of hydrogen-rich water we saw in the previous study. But we definitely need more research about that responders, non-responders issue about hydrogen.
And that actually
and
comes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. And also, I see the hydrogen as an agent with both acute effects, which are easily to understand, considering the responder and non-responder effects, but also some long-term effects that are related to gene expression. So if we, for example, administer hydrogen for a couple of months, not just a few weeks or 1 month or like that, we will for sure address that issue about responsiveness and non-responsiveness to hydrogen for different medical diagnoses and disorders.
Yeah, and we need more long-term studies on this stuff for dosing frequency.
Exactly.
And do we need to wash out? Do we need to change frequency, change dose every 6 months? You know, I know just for myself anecdotally and a half dozen people close to me, we found that if every 6 months you take 2-3 days off taking hydrogen and change your dose and time of day,
Yeah.
you get this ping where you get the
Yeah.
benefits. Like
Yeah.
maybe my shoulder pain would slowly start coming back
Yeah.
after 6 months, but if I take 2 days off and then instead of in the morning take it at night in a different dose, within 2 days my shoulder pain's gone again. Now that's completely anecdotal.
Yeah,
Right,
but
but-
there is some kind of tolerability effect or some kind of adaptation.
Well, even like exercise.
Of course,
if you do
with
the
everything,
same
yeah.
exercise
Exactly.
every day forever, it's no
Exactly.
longer exercise to you.
Exactly.
Right? If hydrogen is working as a hormetic agent, you know,
yes.
as an exercise mimetic,
Yep.
you know, and you do the same dose at the same time of hydrogen every day,
Yeah.
you might build the tolerance to it.
Exactly. So probably the washout period is a pretty smart thing to do. We do it routinely for scientific reasons, but during this adaptation and hormesis theory, it's probably wise to spend some time without hydrogen and then took it again.
Yeah. And I want to get in, you know, because these responder versus non-responder studies are very expensive.
Yeah,
you need
yeah.
a lot of people, you know,
Exactly.
you need to go through a lot of data, you need to, you know, look at their, you know, what genes they carry, you know,
Yeah.
there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions and millions of dollars
Yep.
to conduct even first responder versus non-responder
Yeah.
studies. Now, is it encouraging, just this last weekend from when we're talking, so we're at American College of Sports Medicine right now in Orlando. Professor Ostojic is here for the conference. But back in Europe, just this past weekend, they did the heart transplants on pigs, which I think they got $400,000 in a
Yeah.
grant or something
Unbelievable.
to use hydrogen for these pig heart transplants. Now, I see the smile on your face.
Yeah. That is
it's
a huge-
big grant for a
Yeah.
first, you know, pig transplant study. And how do you think that will? Do you think that will help you getting more funding for more hydrogen study?
I
in
really
Europe,
hope
being
so. Yeah.
close to home.
I do hope so. I sent a congress letter to one of the people who is involved with that study. It's a big deal, you know. As far as I'm concerned, this is the biggest grant that any hydrogen research received anytime now, and I hope the positive marketing and information spread around about that study will push other public bodies, big funding bodies, including the NIH or European research fund bodies, to support research on hydrogen. And I really looking forward to see the results of that study. But we need, for sure, the results published as soon as possible, of course,
Yeah.
and hopefully positive to draw attention about it. A couple of years ago, I applied for a big grant to the NATO. They have a very nice science for peace and security funding, and I applied with a big grant about hydrogen in traumatic injuries back then, and I was into the final. It was very close to get the biggest grant that this in Slovakia, but I didn't want it. So I hope this will push things forward, and I'm looking forward very much to visit Slovakia because we are negotiating to make some kind of collaboration about that study and the whole hydrogen medicine idea. So that's great, really.
Well, it's very close to home.
Yeah.
You know, for you coming
it's-
from Serbia
yes,
to Slovakia,
yes, very
is,
close, yes.
You know.
1.5 hours by plane.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, you mentioned traumatic injury, and I believe you're recruiting right now for.
Yeah.
Can I talk about this?
Yeah, you can
You know-
talk about this. We're waiting for the first athlete that will suffer a brain concussion, and we prepared a very specific protocol of 24-hour acute treatment with hydrogen. It's really, I'm not really allowed to talk about more about the details.
We don't have any data
Yeah.
yet, so
Yes.
I mean it's interesting. I mean, I think there's good hypothesis on why it would work. There's the study
Yeah.
that was done at the University of Washington on traumatic brain injury in rats.
Yeah.
You know, there's all the post-stroke
Yes.
studies and human data on
Yeah.
hydrogen,
Very
showing a
positive so
rescuing
far. Yeah.
effect. You know, I believe it's a sound hypothesis
Yeah.
that hydrogen, you know, water will work, you know, post-concussion.
Yeah.
To mitigate some of the damages, but we need the data.
I'm allowed to tell you that we were going to use a very good, very robust methodology to evaluate the recovery during the first 24 hours using the top tool to evaluate the many different symptoms, including the cognitive symptoms and many other interesting issues. So I'm looking forward. It's not easy to provoke it, yeah, of course, but we are waiting for the first athlete that will suffer the traumatic brain injury, and we will evaluate them. This is the part of the bigger projects of one of my PhD students that evaluate the use of hydrogen in athletic environment. First part of the study is related to athletic performance, but the second one is related to the different athletic injuries, including the soft tissue injuries, also the brain concussion.
I'm very much sitting at the edge of my seat waiting for the data on that.
We are going to use your product.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Exciting. So I do want to ask what direction you think the research is going to go. I mean, I have my own thoughts and hypothesis. I think if the theory is that hydrogen is a hormetic agent working as an exercise mimetic, calorie restriction mimetic, pan out and keep on being validated, then perhaps hydrogen will be explored more for athletics, more for lifestyle diseases like metabolic syndrome, NAFLD, even diabetes as an adjuvant therapy. But there's a lot of diseases, even many cancers, Alzheimer's, that exercise does have a benefit to, right? In cancer therapy, they recommend you exercise because it has a benefit. Yeah. So I think the more that hypothesis is validated, if it's validated, it'll give us better direction in research to know these are the targets for hydrogen as a first line, these are the targets for hydrogen as an adjuvant recommendation, that it will do a benefit. It's not going to lift, of course, the whole weight of it, but it's going to have a benefit. Now, I'm sure you have more insights into this.
Yes, I have. In my opinion, I would like to see the comparison between hydrogen and exercise to see is it really mimetic. Try to make some kind of controlled conditions and compare the effects on some biomarkers. But I'm more interested into the second line of research, and I'm looking forward to address this in the years to come, which is related to the neurodegenerative diseases. You already know that most of the neurodegenerative diseases do not have any cure so far, and we still don't understand really the mechanism.
And interesting, exercise is shown, leg exercise particularly, is shown to be one of the best defenses in staving off neurodegenerative diseases.
That's true. I see the one of the most important aspects of the hydrogen is that it is a really small molecule that easily go into the brain. It's always the case. We have many good drugs in the phase 1 of evaluation addressing the Parkinson or Alzheimer's disease, but when we apply that in the humans, no results, and many different agents are very positive. The problem is that it's not easy to deliver the effective drug from the gut or from the circulation to the brain.
Well, the blood-brain barrier.
Because of the blood-brain barrier, exactly. And hydrogen might be the first one that is easily driven to the brain and do the job inside the cell, inside the mitochondria, inside the hard-to-reach tissues such as the brain.
And one of the big problems in a lot of neurodegenerative disease models is runaway excess chronic inflammation, right? Because anti-inflammatories aren't getting there, aren't doing the work. So we know that hydrogen isn't anti-inflammatory per se. It more regulates the inflammatory response, which is actually how exercise works, by acutely raising pro-inflammatory cytokines as their myokine rolls, eliciting a greater anti-inflammatory response. Interleukin 6 might go up acutely, but then a greater response from interleukin 10 knocking it down. So hydrogen seems to be regulating, production of our pro-inflammatory cytokines, not blunting inflammation, which could be very useful because if it's doing it in the brain too, and there is good preliminary study on neuroinflammation on hydrogen. I mean, that's huge because that wouldn't necessarily treat or cure the disease, but it would ameliorate one of the issues preventing drugs from working, later stage in the disease.
Yeah, that's true. I am also interested into the possible effects of hydrogen on the gene expression of mitochondria and of the genes related to mitochondrial bioenergetics. And one of my hypotheses is that hydrogen, used even orally as an inhalation agent, could improve the level of creatine and different biomarkers of bioenergetics in the brain, because all these neurodegenerative diseases share the same symptoms or the same trait. It is a low level of cellular energy. So it might be that hydrogen might increase the cellular energy in the brain of those populations that might be related to the better quality of life and have different aspects of people suffering of Parkinson or
and it's a point
Alzheimer's.
I brought up to the one researcher on the metabolic syndrome study going in. One of the markers that was not consistent. Some people lost a lot of weight, and other people didn't lose any weight, right? So that shows that it's a different factor. Well, if hydrogen's working as a, say, exercise mimetic, right? If it's making them have more energy, feel better, perhaps these people who are now 60 with metabolic syndrome, obese, pre-diabetes, started feeling better, so they all of a sudden started going for walks again. Going to work out because they have more energy. They're walking around, whereas other people who had been sedentary for life, even though they have no more energy, they have more energy. They never ever had the habit to use their energy anyways, so they continue being sedentary. Whereas the others are feeling better, so they're getting more active again.
That should be strictly controlled in the future study. If we want to prove that hydrogen is an exercise mimetic, to be somehow balanced regarding the habitual physical activity during the research. But it might be really helpful to see, is it really a mimetic or not? And finally, perhaps to combine those two positive factors, lifestyle factors such as a regular hydrogen use and regular physical activity, that might help us to tackle those complex diseases.
It could, one of the biggest, anecdotes we hear, which sounds really quack-like, people say, I just feel better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have more energy, you feel better.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? If it's driving, mitochondrial energy production, you feel better.
Yeah, that's true.
You're more active, you feel better.
Exactly.
Right? So it sounds like a real placebo thing, I just feel better, but it has a sound basis on why someone could feel better drinking hydrogen water. Now you mentioned hydrogen may be increasing, cellular creatine. And I know you've talked with me in the past about you think there's a synergistic relationship between hydrogen and creatine a little bit, and I have taken creatine on and off since I was 16 years old. In the past as a performance enhancer, for sports and physical training, but now I've started thinking of it more as a daily health supplement. And it's the same thing with caffeine. Caffeine will show in a single dose maybe that you have a better sprint time or better endurance. Like caffeine is an incredible ergogenic agent, for sports performance. In fact, so many sports products rely only on high doses of caffeine. It's the only thing that works in the product.
Yeah, that's true.
So our next two essentials that we're launching on our site is actually just pure caffeine, just a 100 milligrams a tablet, and creatine, because I am viewing both of them more as protective neurodegeneration daily
agents.
Supplements. Now,
more and more data are collected during the past couple of years regarding the use of creatine as a regular dietary supplement for general public. Because we already know that in many different diseases, not just when we are talking about athletic performance, the level of cellular energy is down. My interest in hydrogen and creatine is actually because of my lab is partly dedicated to addressing the problems of impaired bioenergetics, low bioenergetics in many different issues. So the creatine and hydrogen appears to share the ability to increase the level of cellular bioenergetics. We just talked about that. One of the biggest companies in the world, actually the owners of the whole creatine idea from Germany, they started to sell and promote the hydrogen for other creatine for general population. And they're advising particularly the children with learning disabilities or elderly the regular daily usage of creatine every single day until the end of the life, because the creatine appears to be very, very beneficial for many different health biomarkers. So you got it right regarding the use of creatine in general population. And probably it might be interesting to think about making a product that contains both hydrogen and creatine in the same mixture.
It would be
to get
hard,
the most of the both sides. It's not easy.
Yeah,
I know
no,
that.
It's
extremely complicated.
I've thought about it. I mean, for the listeners, our tablet and a 12 millimeter tablet, the current one is a result of over 3,000 iterative adjustments. Now, to get that up to like a 1-inch tablet that we need to put a creatine dosage in, it would completely change everything to do with both the reaction and dissolution kinetics. It would probably take me 3,000 more iterative adjustments to get something working. We talked about this at ACSM last year, just privately, and I've been thinking about it for the last year, and I'm like, man, could I do that? Could I make a tablet that big that's full of like another active ingredient that could make it? And I've done a few experiments, and let's just say it'll be at least another year of my R&D.
At least you should consume 2 tablets at the same time, because in my opinion, this is just my opinion, hydrogen might increase the bioavailability of creatine in the gut. That might increase the level of creatine in the circulation if consumed together. We
have gotten some wild anecdotes from other private label customers of mine that sell supplements and monitor blood levels of bioavailability, and they say when we take this vitamin or this alongside hydrogen, we need way less of it to get the same
that's great
levels.
That's very good.
So that's all just anecdotal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're internal studies. We did a internal experiential study, on even in conjunction with caffeine and in conjunction with, even things like, NR and PQQ, where taking the full dose recommended by the manufacturers, say if we swallowed the pill with the hydrogen, it had no effect, but pressing them into the pill, right? Our heart rate's elevating, crazy energy going on, like things that we were monitoring, and it could need, because we know that hydrogen is out of your system between 5 to 30 minutes. So these capsules you're taking, they take 15, 20 minutes to break down. So the hydrogen's already out of your system. But when I pressed it all together, and it was all like in the nanobubble emulsion, it was crazy, just like, it was wild. Anyways, is all I can say. Taking, full dose of PQQ and NR with the H2, which NR is having a bioavailability issue. There's studies coming out saying perhaps oral nicotinamide riboside isn't particularly bioavailable in humans. That could be a cool subject. Because when I put it into a tablet, my heart rate went from 50 to 90
or 90,
and my body was tingling. And I said, okay, is this placebo? And I had 10 other people internally with my company try it, and a similar response happened to like 8 of them.
All responders, huh?
So it's interesting, but again, we need data on that. We need to know, is this going to work? And that's going to be important for drugs, because so far there's been a lot of studies with hydrogen using with a drug, and there's been no adverse events. But if we put the drug into a hydrogen solution, is that going to change? Because the drug might take an hour to hit your system, and hydrogen's already gone by then. Right? So if you do it at the same time entering your gut, is that going to have a change? Maybe.
Maybe.
We just need to study it.
More studies are needed.
I guess I need to make more money to donate more.
Thank you for that.
All right. Well, as always,
a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you,
right,
Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.